The Mets spiral continued on Monday as they lost another game to the Braves. If they're going to snap out of this, they need Juan Soto to carry the team.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, another loss for the New York Mets on Monday night makes 9 losses out of their last 10 games as they have really just free-falled in the standings. And another loss to the Braves, 4 in a row to start off their season against their division rival. Going to be very tough to climb out of this and win the season series versus Atlanta. But at this point, you're just trying to see this team snap out of it. And it's becoming a pattern where this team is not putting up runs and they're getting bad starts. And Carlos Mendoza was pretty blunt about it after the game. In the past, we've seen him defend his guys and go to bat for them to the media, just kind of, push it off like, yeah, it is what it is. This happens. It's a baseball season. Credit the team on the other side. After this game, he said that the starting pitching continues to put this team in a hole, and the at-bats just have not been good. Talked about how much the Mets have been chasing and also how the back of the lineup has just given the Mets nothing. When you get past Pete Alonso and get into that bottom half of the lineup, it's just been nothing but struggles. And even Pete Alonso hasn't been good. You look at the game today, top of the lineup, 1 through 3, pretty solid, I guess. Brett Baty in the 9-hole got a couple of base hits. He went 2 for 3. If you look at Pete Alonso on down until you got to Baty. So Pete, Jeff McNeil, Tyrone Taylor, Jared Young, and Luis Torrens. That group of 5 hitters went 0 for 18 in this game with 5 strikeouts and no walks. Going to be pretty tough if the big chunk in the middle of your lineup is just doing nothing. The top 3 of Lindor, Nimmo, and Soto accounted for 4 of the Mets' 6 hits, with, again, Baty, accounting for the other 2. You look at the pitching on the other side, that is part of it. The Mets have been going up against a bunch of really good starting pitchers. They saw great pitching in that series against the Rays. They have seen great pitching every single game against the Braves. By design, the Braves have set it up so the Mets would see nothing but their absolute best, and it's working out for them. They've won 4 in a row against the Mets. And then you saw Zach Wheeler and Jesus Luzardo look lights out. The only respite the Mets have had from good starting pitching during this brutal stretch has been the one game they won, Mick Abel, a rookie pitcher. You are going to see another rookie pitcher on Wednesday, so hopefully the Mets will be able to score some runs against Didier Fuentes, but you got to get there, and before then, you still have another game against a really good pitcher coming up tonight, Spencer Strider, so it doesn't get any easier, and this team just has to put together better at-bats. So if nothing else, you get to the underbelly of that Braves bullpen, which is not good, but instead, Spencer Schwellenbach was on the mound through 7 innings, and honestly, he could have gone back out there for the 8th inning if they wanted to. He's at 89 pitches. The only runs that Schwellenbach gave up was a 2-run homer hit by Juan Soto in the bottom of the 6th inning. It was a thunderous blast in the left center field. Great swing by Soto. But other than that, there was really no offense to speak of. He gave up a base hit to Brett Baty and another to Francisco Lindor in the 3rd inning, so the Mets had a little something cooking, but they couldn't do anything with it. Baty got a single in the 6th inning, would have been on base to score on Soto's home run, but Matt Olson in an outstanding double play. Ball hit back to him. He was able to go get the sure out at first base and was able to still have time to gun down Baty at second on a tag play. So that was a big blow to the Mets, because if Baty beats that out, would have been a tie game. Instead, that out ends up looming pretty large. And then Schwellenbach walked Nimmo in front of Soto's home run. But that was it. That's all he gave up the entire game. He was great. But the Mets also made it easy on him at times because they chased. And if they can avoid expanding the zone, then maybe you at least, if nothing else, drive up his pitch count, and you're going to get a couple more pitches to hit in those hitters' counts where you might be able to potentially do some damage. But instead, just another night of rough at-bats. And again, you can look at it as, oh, the Mets are just struggling, or you can also credit a pitcher who has had their number over the last couple of years. Schwellenbach has just been very good. Now, when Raisel Iglesias came in the game, who has been removed from his closer role, it seems, the Mets had a chance there in the 8th inning. You had Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo each get base hits to bring up Soto. Soto has runners at first and third, 2 outs. They bring in lefty Dylan Lee out of the bullpen, who's been one of, if not their best reliever this year, working on a 1.77 ERA on the season and a 0.81 whip. Has really good slider. Soto had a great at-bat, or well, not a great at-bat because he struck out, but he definitely had a typical Juan Soto at-bat where it was a long at-bat. He got himself into a 3-1 count, swung through a slider badly, then 2-strike approach, fouls off a couple of pitches. And if you look at where Dylan Lee was locating at the corners, it's perfect execution, really. The slider that Soto fouls off in the 3-2 count was pretty much dotted low and away. And then the next pitch that he throws is a fastball that was maybe 2 or 3 baseballs up in the zone. So it's a pitch where the location, when it comes to east-west, right, when it comes to location, it was on the outer half again. So you're thinking, is it another slider? Everything has been that way. And the hope is he's slowed down waiting for the slider and you can blow the fastball by him. It's at 97 miles per hour, but Soto was able to get a piece of it and stay in the at-bat. So it was a good at-bat. It was your typical Juan Soto. He's nodding at the pitcher. He's looking in. He's intimidating. And then he fished. And it wasn't a pitch that was in the dirt that he fished on. It was a perfectly executed slider just below the zone. Exactly where you want it, where it looks like a strike until it's not. And it's in the catcher's glove, and the batter just swings right through it. And that's what happened. It's one of those at-bats where, sure, you might look at the title of the show today and think that the reason why I'm saying that Juan Soto has to put the team on his back is because he didn't come through in that spot. Partially that's the case. I'm not blaming this game on Soto. He's the only reason why the Mets had any offense to speak of in this game. But for this team to break out of it, he's got to be the engine that drives them. I'm going to talk about that more in the next segment. One note on that, though. Anthony DiComo tweeted this out after the game. Since the Mets left Colorado, they are averaging 3.4 runs per game, which ranks last in the National League, and is only behind the White Sox, the Guardians, and the Royals in Major League Baseball during that span. But as he says, Juan Soto has driven in 27.3% of the Mets' runs during that stretch. He's not the problem, is what DiComo says, and he really isn't, but I need him to do even more, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the next segment. On the pitching side of things, just to talk about the start, Paul Blackburn was okay. That's the best way I can describe it. He was not terrible, but he definitely wasn't good. He was helped out in the first inning as Jeff McNeil made a really heady play. You had Acuña standing on third base, and McNeil gets a low line drive hit at him by Marcell Ozuna, plays it on a bounce. Acuña froze on the line drive, and McNeil was able to identify it, make a throw to third base, and they were able to get Acuña and get that lead runner, the runner that was 90 feet away. That definitely saved Blackburn from giving up a run in that first inning. He put up a 0 there. Second inning, he hits Ozzie Albies, who then stole second base, advanced to third on a bloop single by Sean Murphy, and scored on a sacrifice fly. Could have been a worse inning, but he got out of that one. Then the third inning, Ronald Acuña Jr. hit a home run. Matt Olson doubled, 2 walks, loaded the bases with nobody out. He got a pop-up, then a sac fly, and a line out at Pete Alonso to get out of the inning. Another one that could have been worse, but he gave up 2 runs there. Fourth inning, he struck out 2, including Acuña. Had a good inning overall. Fifth inning, he gave up a triple to Austin Riley. Got a few outs in the inning, but then and I will say on that triple, Tyrone Taylor got a little bit turned around. I think a lot of times if you give Tyrone Taylor a chance again, he probably makes that play. Regardless, gives up the triple, gets a couple of outs, issues a walk to Sean Murphy to put runners at first and third, and Carlos Mendoza saw enough, didn't want the game to get away from them. So he goes to Jose Budo, who was able to get the final out of the fifth inning and was able to pick up all the outs in the sixth inning. The bullpen was great in this game, 4 1/3 scoreless, allowed 3 hits, 2 of them by Edwin Diaz in the ninth inning. They racked up 8 strikeouts, an inning and a third from Budo, 1 from Stanek, 1 from Garrett, 1 from Diaz. But unfortunately, the Mets just could not get over the top because their one opportunity to win the game, Juan Soto struck out instead of getting the big hit that the Mets needed. I want to talk about Soto more in the next segment. He has to carry this team right now. I don't know if there's any other way for this offense to really get on track, particularly in this series. So I'll go through that a little bit more in just a minute. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra and Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Rugiet is completely online and connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment directly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code LockedOnMLB to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for a full safety information. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now, if you look at the month of June, there's only 2 players in baseball that have a higher OPS than Juan Soto. You got Byron Buxton of the Twins and the guy that we're seeing way too much right now, Ronald Acuña Jr. But Soto has a 1.181 OPS. He's hitting 328 in the month of June, 494 on base percentage. Let me say that one more time. A 494 on base percentage. He has 21 walks, 212 strikeouts, a 687 slug, 7 home runs, 3 doubles, 14 RBIs. But I think if you look at this game, that at bat in the 8th inning is the perfect encapsulation of Juan Soto right now. He did everything right. He just got beat. And if you isolate that at bat, Soto versus that pitcher, and what he saw in the at bat, you just have to tip your cap. It was a clinic on how to pitch to a very tough hitter by Dylan Lee. Really good left on left matchup. And Soto hung in the at bat. He just never got anything to hit. And the only thing he could have done is spit on that 3-2 pitch, not swung, not fished, although, again, it was a really good slider just below the zone. Take it as walk, and if the bases loaded with Pete Alonso is the situation you're hoping for, I don't know if Pete would have come through with the way he's been swinging it lately. He's had really good numbers in June overall, but his last 10 games during this run for the Mets, where they've been struggling, he's been right there on that struggle bus. So it's an interesting spot here where not only does Juan Soto need to have the best possible at bat that he can, and in this instance, the best thing he probably could have done is walked, but you need him to actually do even more than that. You need him to deliver. You need him in that moment to swing the bat, but not only to swing the bat, but in this instance, somehow hit that slider below the zone and find a hole and get a base hit, or he has to foul it off and live to fight for another pitch. Granted, again, if he does take the walk, maybe Pete Alonso does come through with the base hit with the bases loaded, or maybe at some point Dylan Lee spikes a slider and Lindor can score from third base. But right now, if you look at where this lineup is at, Juan Soto has been the guy, and if you can get some more traction ahead of him in the lineup, whether that is, just Lindor and Nimmo have been doing a pretty good job. Nimmo has been much better lately. Lindor seems to be coming out of it, but if you get Brett Beatty all of a sudden hitting in that 9-hole, putting some more traffic on the bases, you need to set Soto up a little bit. But Juan Soto, when he gets a chance to win the game for you in the 8th inning, I know it's an unfair thing to say, but if this Mets team is going to break out of this, Soto's got to find a way to come through there. And he didn't get a lot that he could have come through on, but he's got to find a way. He has to be the best player on this team right now because he is, and the best hitter at least. And he's showing it this month. He has been so much better. You are seeing those patented Juan Soto bats. You're seeing the light tower power. You're seeing what Juan Soto can do in the box. And it's been a really, different experience from what we saw earlier this season, but it's one that we haven't been able to fully enjoy because the Mets have been struggling so much as a team. And so even when he's having some good at-bats, if there's no one on base in front of him, it doesn't matter. He's got to hit the ball out of the ballpark to do anything in those spots. And even when he's gotten these few moments, he hasn't always come through when the game is on the line. That's what has to be different. If the Mets are going to win this series, Juan Soto has got to step up and have some special moments. And he's capable of it because we've seen it throughout his career, and he is locked in right now. These are the at-bats that you pay $765 million for, what he's done in June, to be posting an OPS well over 1,000, to be getting on base nearly half the time he steps into the box. All of that is fine and well, but he's got to take it to another level. Because, yes, it's not all on him. It's not even on him. He's been good. The rest of the lineup hasn't. But 14 RBIs this month. He needs to be more of a run producer. When he gets those opportunities, he can't miss. He can't miss out on those chances. And if he does, it has to be because he's passing the baton to Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso has to step up. You look at the rest of this lineup right now. I think Lindor and Nimmo will continue to be better. And so I feel good about the 1 through 3. Pete Alonso this year has been great, but he's got to snap out of this recent funk. Same thing with Jeff McNeil. He's hit a little bit of a slump as well. So if those two guys can get back to being themselves and being consistent hitters in this lineup, well, your 1 through 5 is really solid. Question is, what's going to happen at the bottom of this lineup that can make things better? Hopefully Brett Beatty can build off of this game, and I think keeping him in the 9 hole would be probably the best course of action here, because Beatty, it's a limited sample size, but he's 7 for 13 in the 9 hole this season, so I'd keep him there. Hopefully Luis Torrens with more consistent playing time will start to hit, but really the big shoe that's left to drop here, and what we're going to talk about to close out the show, is Mark Vientos coming back. The Mets need Mark Vientos to lengthen this lineup, and once they can get this lineup to be a little bit longer, you can get a little bit of traffic on the bases in front of the top of the lineup. You get those guys maybe one more turn. So instead of 4 at-bats in the game, maybe they get 5. Once this team starts to collectively have a better approach, they start to take Juan Soto's approach and maybe learn from it, and they can be a little more patient outside of the zone and put themselves into better situations. I think at times you get into this collective slump as a team, and everybody starts pressing. Everybody starts to try to hit the home run themselves. And that's just not how you're going to go about winning. They need to get back to the fundamentals. They need to get back down to the basics. They need to just, each individual person, just like last season, when Francisco Lindor locked the doors to the clubhouse, and it was about holding everybody accountable, that everybody had to do the best they could from the day they showed up for their work day at the ballpark to the day they left, to do everything they possibly could to individually be the best player they can be. The Mets need more of that. And the best player that Juan Soto can be is the best player in baseball. And the Mets are going to need that right now, because this is a team that I don't think is going to see great starting pitching until at least next week when Sean Manaea comes back. And even then, I don't know if this rotation is going to be what it was up until Senga went down. I think until you get fully healthy or make some big moves at the deadline, this could be a rotation that has a couple guys who are giving you some clunkers every turn through. You never know. And so if you're going to win games despite your starting pitching, you need the bats to do it. And there's one bat that can do more than anyone else, and that's Juan Soto. But I think it's worth pointing out how good he has been this month, and the fact that he has been the Soto that earned the contract. So now he's just got to take it one step further. And when he gets those big opportunities, those big spots in the 8th inning where he can literally win the game for the Mets, he's got to win the game for the Mets. I mean, that's the difference. That at bat was the difference in the game. And again, you tip your cap to Dylan Lee. That's why the Braves win, because of Dylan Lee. But the Mets could have won because of Juan Soto if he was able to measure that slider, if he was able to lay off and set up Pete Alonso, and maybe Pete comes through. So that's the little margin of error in baseball that's so tough, where it comes down to just a game of inches. If he's able to foul that off, hangs in the at-bat, you never know. Instead, he strikes out. So we'll see if Soto can step it up to an even further degree, and I don't think it is the overall number. It's simply being a little more clutch. If that happens, maybe this team can get back on track. But also, they are trying to shake things up. The roster was changed on Monday. I want to tell you what's different and when Mark Vientos will be coming back. We'll get to all of that in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start to build wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, so you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where I keep you up to date with everything going on with the New York Mets. Today, I let the insiders know the Mets had signed left-hand reliever Richard Lovelady. Then Luisangel Acuna got demoted and all the roster moves were announced, and they got a notification for all of that as well. You also get to take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, looking back on yesterday's show, I was a little more spot on than I even gave myself credit for because I was talking about the Mets roster and comparing it to last year where there was all of that turnover where they hit the skid in May. And so they, flipped the script. They picked up Terrence. They had David Peterson return off the IL. They optioned Christian Scott down. They brought up Daniel Nunez. They called up Iglesias. They get the keys to the third base to Vientos. And all of a sudden, all of this turnover sparked a brand new Mets team. Well, I was talking about that on yesterday's show, but then I was going through the options and I was like, I don't even see what they do. Like, how can they change this team? Are they going to be able to pick up a reliever? Like, are they going to make a trade early? They made a trade early last year for Maton. And what I should have said on yesterday's show is the Mets will be making changes to this roster, but nobody has any idea what David Stearns is going to do. Because what he decides to do on Monday is make a move to pick up a reliever that was out in the market who wants to be known as Dickie Lovelady. That's Richard Lovelady, but I guess his friends call him Dickie. He was pitching to a 1.31 ERA in AAA in 19 appearances in the Twins affiliate. He was holding left-handed batters to a 5.67 OPS on this season, and he has been very good against lefties across his career. He had an opt-out in his contract, so he became a free agent, and he signed with the Mets. So that was the first move. And Lovelady replaced Tyler Zuber in the bullpen. The Mets need to open up a spot for Frankie Montas to make his Mets debut tonight on Tuesday. They have Daniel Nunez and Chris Devansky. One of those two guys will likely get sent down because they are still in their option years here. Meanwhile, you have Jose Castillo and Dickie Lovelady, the two lefties in the Mets bullpen now, who are probably locked in for the time being until Brooks Raley comes back. We'll see. I mean, if Lovelady goes out there and throws a bunch of clunkers, maybe not. And the Mets could always decide to cut bait with Castillo and make Lovelady the one lefty in their bullpen. But it seems like they're sort of interested to have two lefties for a little bit here. Until you get Sean Manaea back, you can roll with this bullpen so that this can be your bullpen this week where it's Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Huascar Brazaban, Jose Budo, Ryan Stanek. Then you have one of Nunez or Devansky and the two lefties, Castillo and Lovelady. Then when Manaea comes back, you either get rid of one of the lefties or you get rid of the other one of Daniel Nunez or Devansky and roll with that as your bullpen for a little bit, with one of the starting pitchers, likely Blackburn, sliding in, and you sort of roll from there. But again, things can change very quickly when it comes to the bullpen, but this certainly seems like an arm that the Mets are going to try to keep in the pen for a little bit of time here to see if they maybe can find another diamond in the rough potentially. The other big move the Mets made, they have finally sent down Luisangel Acuna, and they have brought up Mets legend Travis Jankowski. We all remember Travis Jankowski from 2022. He's going to come back up here to be a fourth outfielder, give you some speed, some defense. He'll be, a defensive replacement late in games. He'll be pinch running late in games. He won't be playing too much, but he is the type of guy that can thrive in that same type of role that Luisangel Acuna has been playing. He's not going to give you the versatility of Acuna as far as being able to play all over the infield. Instead, it's a guy that's playing in the outfield. But right now, this is a move that will keep Jeff McNeil at second base a little bit more, I would think, particularly late in games. You're not going to be subbing him out. So you'll see more McNeil there. And also you can see Beatty certainly sub in for defense in games where once you get Vientos back, if Vientos got to start at third, then all of a sudden Beatty plays that role a little bit of the defensive replacement at second or third. Although, again, late in the game, if you're going to sub one of them out, you're probably going to sub out Vientos over McNeil. But regardless, this is a move that I don't know if it makes the Mets better right now. And I said this in my little short reacting to the news that I put up on YouTube. I think the two demotions of Alvarez and Acuna both are the right moves for the player, and they also make the team worse. I really feel like that's the case. With Alvarez, I'm sorry, as bad as he's been this year, you can't tell me that he's not a better player right now than Hayden Sanger. I get sending him down, though. It makes sense. You give him some time here to play every single day, to catch 4 times a week, DH twice, and get a ton of at-bats and hopefully become the Francisco Alvarez that can be a difference maker in that bottom half of the lineup for the stretch run this season. So it makes complete sense. For Acuna, it's a 23-year-old that could be your second baseman of the future, but right now he's wasting away on the bench. And I think Acuna is better at the role that he is playing than probably anybody the Mets could plug into that role this year. He's better at being the speedster than Travis Jankowski. Jankowski's got, a decade on him? I don't think that Jankowski, despite the fact that he does run the bases well, has great baseball IQ. He doesn't run like Acuna does. He's 34 years old. Now, he's still quick. He's still going to be able to go to first or third on every base hit. He's going to be able to score from first on every double. He's going to be able to swipe the occasional bag. He's still going to be able to do all of the things, just maybe not the level of Acuna. And I don't think that he's going to lift your defense as much as Acuna did late in games, because you're not subbing out Nimmo. You're not subbing out Soto. You're probably not going to sub out Tyrone Taylor from center field. And if you are in a situation where Jeff McNeil started the game in center field and you had Beatty starting at second base, late in game, you want to improve your defense in center, you're still going to stick Tyrone Taylor out there over Jankowski. So literally, Jankowski is a runner for this team. And yes, you might see him in the outfield occasionally. And that might give him a start here and there. I don't think that he won't play at all. But this is more about having that quick option on your bench and bringing up a guy also. I think, they could have done this a week ago with Gilberto Celestino. I think part of this too was Travis Jankowski is a clubhouse guy too. This is sort of the Jose Iglesias move from last year, as far as just, hey, let's bring a good guy who's a veteran, who's got a decade of experience. Let's bring him into this clubhouse and just change up the vibes a little bit. Let's get rid of a young player who's probably frustrated that he's not playing and bring up a guy that's going to be happy to do everything because he's just happy to be back in the big leagues. Not that Acuna wasn't happy to be in the big leagues, but at a certain point, his last 15 games played, he got 15 at-bats. I mean, at some point, you got to think Acuna was getting pretty bored, and you sort of saw that with some of the, antics with the catcher's mask and the dugout. This is a kid that he's probably a little bit disappointed to go down, but then when he's going to be in Syracuse, he's going to get to just play baseball for a week. He might realize, okay, this is the right place for me right now. This is where I can get better. And I think we still see Acuna back this year. I still think in September, the best player for the end of the bench role is Luisangel Acuna. But for now, plug Jankowski in there, wait till the rosters expand. And then when you get to the playoff roster, obviously you can make your decision. And who knows, Jankowski might only be here for a little bit. Whenever Jose Siri is ready, maybe they make a switch. But I think Jankowski might linger on this roster a little bit longer than you would think. And I also, again, just to close the book on Acuna, this is the right move for him. Let him play all of July, all of August. Let him get a solid, 10 weeks here playing baseball every single day. And then in September, he's the perfect guy to bring up and be part of your roster for the stretch run. So I think that's where the Mets are at there. And then when it comes to what Jankowski has done, if you don't remember, I do want to acknowledge he was part of the 101 win Mets team, and he was playing a very similar role to the one they're going to ask him to play now. He went to the Rangers in 2023 and won a World Series playing this type of a role. Again, really good vibes guy. Now, I don't think that Jankowski stands any chance of getting demoted in 2 days. Otherwise, why would they even do this? When Mark Vientos comes back, it will be somebody else. But to give you the update on Vientos, he's going to start in Syracuse on Tuesday. He met with the team at Citi Field and got checked out by the doctors, the coaches, the whole deal. He's healthy. He's ready to go, but they want to get him some more at-bats. So he's going to start at third base on Tuesday, play the whole game. On Wednesday in Syracuse, they have a day game. So he will play that as the DH. Once he gets 2 more games of at-bats under his belt, they will make a decision. So he will likely be back with the Mets either on Thursday for the final game of this series against the Braves, or to just join the team on their road trip heading to Pittsburgh for a series over the weekend. So that is the latest on Vientos. When they have to make a move, it's either going to be Jared Young or Ronnie Mauricio that goes down. Theoretically, you could say Brett Beatty too, but I don't think they're sending Beatty down. Beatty does too much for them defensively, especially with Acuña off the roster. You need Beatty's glove at second and third base. Ronnie Mauricio is not going to give you the type of defense that Beatty can. And Ronnie Mauricio's at-bats have not been good. He also needs to go down and play every day. So all of a sudden, the Syracuse Mets lineup might be loaded coming up here because you might all of a sudden have Francisco Alvarez, Luisangel Acuna, they're both going to be there, as well as Ronnie Mauricio taking at-bats down there. And you never know. You might see Jet Williams get the call up to AAA soon too. So that might all of a sudden become kind of a nice sneaky lineup there in Syracuse. But the decision is going to come down to Mauricio or Jared Young. And I just think it's going to be Mauricio because the only reason why I would even consider sending Young down over Mauricio is because you're going to be pretty lefty heavy with Jankowski on your bench, Jared Young on your bench. It's going to be a team, and obviously Brett Beatty to a certain extent on your bench. So the only righty on the bench theoretically is Starling Marte. But Ronnie Mauricio hasn't been swinging well at all, and particularly from the right side. He has looked completely lost. So while I don't think Jerry Young is playing particularly well, I think for right now, the Mets are probably best suited to keep Jared Young because you don't have to play him. If Ryan Mauricio's on the roster, you have to play him at least some. So instead, you send down Mauricio and you let him play every day in Syracuse, and then you start playing Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, and Jeff McNeil a lot. And just try to put your best 9 guys out there as much as possible until the All-Star break. And hopefully that's going to get you somewhere. You look at what they can do. You got Beatty that can cycle between third and second. So when you put Jeff McNeil in center, Beatty would be your second baseman. Vientos obviously will cycle between third base and DH. Tyrone Taylor will be in center field whenever Jeff McNeil is not. And then your DH reps will be split between Vientos, Marte, and then the occasional start to Jared Young, who has gotten to play the last couple of days, hasn't done much with it. So I really do think when you get Vientos back, I don't think you have to feed all the mounts on your bench. I think Jared Young and Jankowski, they can ride away a little bit, and you play the other guys. You play the 11 guys that have to get in there. And also, Caden Sanger's not going to play as much as you were seeing the split between Torrance and Alvarez. So that's another guy. So really, you're playing like 10 guys primarily. Yes, you'll still get the occasional Sanger start. Yes, you'll see Jared Young get a DH game when they like a matchup, or you'll see maybe if they wanted to get Nimmo off his feet and you got one of your pitchers who's a fly ball pitcher, maybe you stick Jankowski out there. Maybe you put Soto in the DH spot for a day, put Jankowski in right instead, whatever it is. But primarily, I think it's 10 guys that are going to be in this lineup until the All-Star break, and it's going to be kind of a rotation there between Beatty, Vientos, McNeil, and Marte and Taylor, just to split those guys up through the 4 spots and do the best you can with it to try to get something going at the bottom of this lineup. Again, Brett Beatty in the 9 hole has been pretty good, so the way I would look at these lineups once you get Vientos back, you have your defense lineup, which is having Vientos at DH, having Taylor in center field, and putting McNeil at second with Beatty at third. So it'd be something like Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos batting 5th, Jeff McNeil batting 6th, Luis Torrens, Tyrone Taylor, and then Brett Beatty. Your offense lineup would be Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, Alonso, Vientos, McNeil in center field, Starling Marte at DH, Torrens, and then, you'd have Beatty at second. Your lineup against a lefty Lindor, they'll probably keep sticking Marte in the 2-hole. I'd prefer to just keep Nimmo in the 2-hole and just have that 1 through 4 stay consistent. But fine, you want to bet Marte second against lefties, that's cool. Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos at third base, with obviously Marte being the DH, Jeff McNeil, Luis Torrens, and Tyrone Taylor. I think that's how they'll do it when they face a lefty. Again, the team is pretty left-handed at that point, but I think that's the best 10 guys they have to be rotating in and out of this lineup, and hopefully that can spark this team a little bit. But the Mets got to wake up, and it doesn't get any easier tonight against Spencer Strider. Hopefully the Mets can find their way to a victory, and then it gets a lot easier after that. I'll be breaking down whatever happens on Tuesday night, both at Citi Field as well as in Syracuse, as we'll have our eye on Vientos, on Francisco Alvarez. There'll be a lot of guys to be covering there, so I'll keep you up to date on everything I can from the Big League Club all the way down to low A. I appreciate all of you who tune in every day. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball, Locked On MLB Game Night. Locked On MLB Game Night is on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed with insights from all of our local experts.